understand. I'm scared for Dalton. I'm scared of this house.
I don't like my room.
There's something wrong with this place. I'm not imagining it. I can feel it. It's like a sickness.
Yeah, you may be a superhero, buddy, but you're not invincible.
They're all trying to get inside of his physical body simply because they crave life.
When you're recommending a spooky movie to your friends, how would you get them interested in Insidious? How would you describe what it's about? Maybe you'd go straight to the obvious and explain that it's another haunted house movie with demons and kids making creepy drawings. Or maybe you'd describe it as a story about a kid who gets caught up in a paranormal mind wrestle with a monster who wants to possess his body. In either case, you'd be recommending a movie that sounds appealing but lacks a certain uniqueness. See, Insidious is a far more interesting film than we often give it credit for. It's a creepy and haunting and even at times deep exploration of fear and trauma that is often overlooked. Now, of course, this movie quickly became a franchise, and with that came the unfortunate case of this movie being viewed more as an entry in the catalog and less as an individual piece with its own unique aspects and ideology. This is a movie that, despite its PG-13 rating, explores dark themes that you may not see upon your first watch. But hey, that's what I'm here for. We're gonna break down Insidious to its core and figure out exactly why all these years later, we're still afraid of things that go bump in the night. I'm Kier Gomes with JoBlo Horror, and you're watching Deconstructing. Insidious is the story of Josh and Renee, a suburban family with 3 young kids, Dalton, Foster, and Callie. The family has just moved into a new home, and after Dalton discovers something strange in the house, he falls into a coma as his parents begin experiencing ghostly terrors of their own and go to an infamous local medium for help. They need the help of Elise, a paranormal psychic, to send Josh into the ghost dimension and save Dalton's life. But what they're about to go up against is much deeper than anyone could have thought it to be.
Who are malevolent and have a more insidious agenda.
Now, I'm gonna talk more about what I think this movie is really about, but before I can do that, we're gonna need some context. This movie is fairly easy to break down thanks to our foolproof formula where I explain the origin of how the movie came to be. Then of course we'll get into the legacy that the film has left, which in this case is quite a big one given the number of films there are in this series. And then we'll cleanse your palate with some trivia before we get into the X Factor, which is the segment where we celebrate the unique accidental successes of this movie. So if you're ready, then stay out of the attic, and don't forget to like the video for the best in horror content, and let's hit play on Insidious. Insidious was directed by legendary horror director James Wan, who you would know as the first director of Saw and the underrated puppet horror film Dead Silence.
Now, who's the dummy?
So James Wan, while enjoying working on Saw and ultimately being happy with the film, felt that Saw's extreme violence and bloodiness may cause certain studios and producers to shy away from working with him. He wanted to show Hollywood that he could make other kinds of movies, and to do it, he decided to take on Insidious as a way to create a scary experience for audiences while also lacking the blood and guts that studios fear. Now, Saw was made for only about $1.2 million, which for a film that mostly takes place in a single room with a handful of cast and crew makes sense. But Insidious was made with a reported budget of only $1.5 million, but has many more set pieces, a larger cast of characters, and tons of practical and visual effects. So, the budget being almost the same as Saw, but having seemingly more visual ambition would prove to be a challenge for James Wan to overcome. The filmmakers overcame this obstacle by shortening the shooting schedule to just 21 days and working long hours to get the coverage they needed. Star of the movie, Patrick Wilson, has recalled the intense shooting schedule of the movie and went on record saying, quote,
"We had long days, and a lot of pages a day, and we didn't get a lot of coverage or rehearsal. But luckily, the benefit of doing a movie that's not on a big budget, and the reason it's usually done like that, is so if the filmmakers feel like, okay, we're not going to sacrifice anything on screen, which I don't think they have, it lets them have complete control, so we were in good hands."
Leigh Whannell wrote the script for the movie, and of course, we at JoBlo Horror love this combination of writer and director. While it seems the two have been busy working on their own projects lately, we hope that it's in the cards for them to team up once again on a new and frightening tale. Whannell wrote the script for Insidious unsure of what the rating would be, but during the filming in 2010 in Los Angeles, it became clear that the muted violence and lack of goo would warrant this film a PG-13 rating, which would make it much more accessible to young audiences.
I was a kid once too, believe it or not.
You're old now.
And speaking of young audiences, Leigh Whannell was only about a year into being married at the time he wrote Insidious, which I think speaks to what this movie is really about. Josh, played by Patrick Wilson, plays a father who works too much but cares for his wife and kids in his own way, usually offering logic or humor as a response to the horrors ensuing in their house and eventually their other house. But the character of Josh may have something more in common with Whannell, and we will definitely be getting into that soon. When Insidious was released in theaters in 2011, it was a smash fucking hit. The movie, as we know, was made for about $1.5 million, and its release saw a return of $100 million all in. I remember seeing this movie in theaters and noticing the audience was mostly made up of teenagers. And as such, there is quite a bit of hype among fans of the film for the new Insidious movie, which will revisit the original story and family, and will be debut directed by Patrick Wilson. The film, of course, was such a success that it spawned all of these subsequent films, and some of them have some merit of their own, but that's a topic for another show. I think what people remember most about this movie is the demon. You know the one. Also, does anyone else think that this emoji looks almost exactly like my man right here? I have more to say about this too, but that's a trivia topic, so hang on.
I want it.
Now, why is Insidious still in the conversation? And why make another one? I think the true legacy that this film leaves behind is the endless potential of the Further, which is basically a dimension where ghosts and demons reside waiting for their chance to cross over.
They are all trying to get inside of his physical body simply because they crave life.
This movie only scratched the surface of the unlimited curiosities that live in between worlds, and fans keep coming back to see where this story can go next. And there isn't much else to say about the legacy, and let's be honest, you're all itching for some trivia. Did you know that the demon? Well, this creepy bastard is actually played by Joseph Bishara, who you probably don't recognize, but he's actually the composer who provided the spine-chilling score to this movie. The musical themes and piano strikes add more than jump scares to the story. They create a sense of anxiety, dread, and otherworldliness that will make you shudder at every corner. And before we move on to my theory on what Insidious is really about, let's see if you can answer this question. Which actor was originally asked to play the role of Josh before Patrick Wilson was hired? Was it A, Wes Bentley, B, Ethan Hawke, C, Bradley Cooper, or D, Rory Cochrane? Comment your answer down below. Alright, my friends, here we are, the final showdown between me and this movie.
Picture's worth 1,000 words.
Yeah, but words are worth 1,000 words too.
Fans of the show will know that I love this segment. I take pride in finding deeper meanings in things that seemingly exist as a trope with no originality. And for today's episode, I thought long and I thought hard, and I wanted to truly understand what makes Insidious so watchable and so satisfying. And instead of teasing it for another 5 minutes while I praise the incredible lighting, fun cinematography, and incredible set design, considering the film's budget, instead I'm just gonna get right to it and tell you once and for all what I think Insidious is really about.
I want you to know this is what I believe, and it may contradict a previous medical diagnosis, but
So, I mentioned earlier that writer Leigh Whannell wrote the script around the same time that he was a newlywed. Well, at the time, Whannell didn't have any kids, but being that he was freshly married, he and his wife may have been kicking around the idea of starting a family. Now, maybe I'm reaching, but hear me out. Insidious kind of has Dalton as our main character, in that the entire story and conflict within it are based around him. But the real main character of this piece is Josh Lambert, a teacher and father who loves his family but is dealing with his own internal anxiety. Josh isn't selfish, but he certainly seems to be preoccupied with his own fears, and he doesn't seem to be communicating them.
God, stop saying that, okay? I don't avoid stressful situations. I'm just dealing with them my own fucking way.
And it's revealed near the end of the movie that Josh has been suppressing memories of his own encounters with evil spirits as a child, and he's had more experience with the Further than he could even remember. But why would this be written into Leigh Whannell's story? Sure, it makes a good device to get Josh into the next dimension to save Dalton, but let's face it, it's a horror movie. They could have written any excuse into this script that dabbles in the otherworldly, but Leigh Whannell chose to highlight Josh's childhood trauma in a moment where the story is at its most unpredictable. Is it possible that Leigh Whannell secretly wrote a movie about his own fear of being a father?
It's no accident that your son is a gifted traveler. The ability was handed down to him by his father.
Look, on the surface, I accept that Josh is just your prototypical horror film husband who seems uninvolved in his family and is continuously gaslighting his wife because he doesn't understand the concept of scary shit happening in his own house. But if we look beyond that, we see a character who works too hard and avoids his family, and who has unresolved trauma from his past that seems to be now tormenting his young son. And to conquer that emoji demon, to save Dalton's life, he must confront his own haunting fear. Hell, Leigh has even publicly talked about his struggles with anxiety and mental health, and I think it's fair to say that maybe he projected some of those fears, inadvertently or otherwise, into his own art. The movie deals with astral projection, and it shows it as basically being an out-of-body experience. This, to me, sounds a lot like a panic attack, or at the very least those haunting nightmares you have where you're flying above your own body. Anxiety can sometimes make you feel like you're in a bad dream, and I think it's safe to say, so does this movie. So, is Insidious really a movie about a person who's deathly afraid of having kids because they're secretly afraid that their own trauma, their own irrational fears, their own baggage, their own bullshit would be passed down to their children? Could it be that Whannell was really journaling his own thoughts into a story about demons and ghosts? Or would you still describe it as just a movie where a kid does creepy drawings?